All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody, or
Good morning.
good afternoon for some of you who are across the country.
Morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to say morning because I know that I'm on Pacific Standard Time and I know a good chunk of you are as well. My name is Cheryl Martinez. I am the one who has been emailing you and in communication with you over like the last few months. I am the program manager with Growth Sector, who is the essentially the backbone organization of the STEM core program. I know a lot of you are a part of your programs on your individual campuses. It might be called something different on your campus, like OMG, Bridge to Engineering. That's completely fine. You're in the right place. Same program, just STEM core is sort of like our overarching name that we call it. Okay, so first of all, can you do the next slide, Ivana? We are recording this session, so you will be able to look back at this recording afterwards. So today we're going to get through quite a few details before you go into your internship placement over the summer. So here's a quick agenda that you can reference. So we are going to talk a little bit today about who Growth Sector is as a company, who our STEM core partners are. We're going to take a look at your Growth Sector offer letter. So each one of you should have received an offer letter that you signed off on directly from me. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between a Growth Sector contractor and an employee, just the difference between those two. We're going to spend some time going over payroll. That's probably going to be the big chunk of today's conversation. And then we're going to talk a little bit about and wrap up with video testimonials and just what we're looking for from our interns to close out your internships. Okay. So one thing I will note before we officially get started is that there are a lot of you on this call. We have tons of interns from across the country. All of you have very different internships, which is why you all have offer letters with your details, right? So you all are at different placements. You have different start dates, different compensations, and just different setups with your mentors. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. So today we're going to be covering overarching expectations and details for all of you as interns. If you have individual questions about your actual placement, my mentor said this, or can I start on this date instead? You need to speak with me offline. All right, so that will be a follow-up conversation just because your question might not pertain to the larger group. If it's something directly in regards to what we're talking about on this call in terms of the agenda today, feel free to put your question in the chat, or I'll leave some time at the end of our conversation today that you can unmute and ask a question directly. All right, does that make sense? And just to note also, I did send out some materials to all of you within like the last week or so. So I have screenshots of it, but you should be able to reference the email that I sent you recently, which includes a pay schedule, an invoice template, and those would be the two big things. All right, but we'll get into that a little bit later. All right, so next slide, please, Ivana. Perfect. All right, well, first of all, congratulations. Huge congratulations to all of you. You did it. You made it through, you persevered through getting your resumes put together, submission through our STEM core application process. And for some of you, another step of even submitting with like the national labs or through our employer directly through their process. You went through interviews with Growth Sector, you went through interviews with your employer partners and your sites or your research sites, and now you're here, you secured an internship. So congratulations, this is definitely a time to celebrate. And really, I want all of you to sort of think about this as the beginning of your professional career. We have interns who intern through the STEM core program who end up staying on with their employer, with their site. Maybe they interned at one site and then it's sort of like a ripple effect where you end up going from internship to eventual job placement. So realize that you have done the work. And this is like a huge step at the beginning of your STEM career and your professional career. So really look at it as that you're starting something really special. So I'm really excited for all of you. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so who is Growth Sector? Totally fine if you've never heard of us. We sort of lurk in the background, and we work really closely with your faculty and your student support specialists and admin. But we do a lot of the work. So Growth Sector is a very small nonprofit. We're based out of San Francisco. I personally am the lone team member in Los Angeles. And a big focus of the work that we do is developing the workforce of the future, i.e. all of you, right? So a big way that we do this is through implementation of the STEM core program. So we work closely with each of your individual campuses and your people that you know on your campus that work with the STEM core. That's who we work with, right? And our real focus is being able to get all of you into STEM jobs, but that starts with obviously career readiness, which is getting your coursework done, making it through your STEM core year, getting to calculus readiness and past that. And then first step, internships and job placement, right? So we're already check off the box, we're moving through, and we're really excited to have all of you. My name again is Cheryl Martinez. I will be working with all of you throughout the summer, just in terms of your internship placements and payroll. You'll also probably, if you have already not heard from Myra Perez, Myra is likely who you did your first round interview with. I was out on maternity leave for a good chunk of that. So I'm back now, but so you'll interact with Myra. And if you haven't already heard from her in terms of your paperwork that you've submitted, so like those W-9s and contractor agreements, if you haven't heard from her, great job. It means you probably filled out everything correctly. If you had heard from her in terms of you were missing information or little things like you were missing a date or you need to sign in this box, just make sure you're following her instructions and resubmitting that enrollment paperwork. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, so for those of you who aren't aware, the STEM core program does far surpass your individual campus. We started off really small. For some background information, I originally was a student support specialist. So your campus coordinator who you work closely with, I used to do that at Santa Ana College for our SAC students on the line. I was there before Myra was there. Can you go back, Ivana, please? But just so you're aware as well that the STEM core program spans nationwide. So we have students on this call from all over the country, from Skyline College in the Bay Area to Howard College in the DC area and everything in between. So the STEM core program is on over 30 campuses across the country. Our main hubs are in California, in the Bay Area, Southern California. We are in New Mexico and Colorado, programs launching in Miami and North Carolina and in the Maryland areas. So the program is growing quite large. So just know that you are in good company and you are with students who are from all over the country working towards very similar goals as yourself. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to include a brief list for you of, this is not everybody, but some of our employer partners that the STEM core program and growth sector works closely with. If you look closely, you'll probably see the site or the school that I'm doing research or interning with this summer. But we work with national labs, with four-year universities to really strengthen like the pipeline. So a lot of you are doing research with engineering departments at 4 years. Excellent. We work with Caltrans, with Tesla, with Stanford Linear Accelerator, and everything in between. So just so you know that we work closely with employer partners in terms of your actual internship placements. But if you see an employer on this list that you're like, like I would really like to learn more about them or be involved with them, don't worry, opportunities will continue to come up for all of you. So there are opportunities to intern going into the academic year potentially or next summer. But even without internships, we do and definitely stay in touch with your campus student support specialists, because during the academic year, we are constantly having our employer partners come on to interact with students through like virtual talks, They'll oftentimes send us like position announcements like randomly and say like, hey, we're looking for 5 STEM course students in New Mexico. Do you have anybody, right? So just stay in touch with your support specialist and know that opportunities will continue to persist as long as you do a great job and do everything that you're supposed to be doing. All right, next slide, please. All right, so I want to draw attention to your internship offer letter. So when I say your internship offer letter, hopefully everybody can see the slide okay? This is what I'm talking about. So every single one of you should have received an official offer letter from Growth Sector. There is a couple of you, I think from Ohlone College, who did not receive an offer letter, but you received something similar with a lot of these specific details in there from Marina. Okay, so but everybody else should have received an offer letter. So this offer letter is going to be like your main resource for details. I get a lot of the time, some of you might email me and say like, hey, Cheryl, look, I don't know what my start date is. It's in your offer letter, right? I'm going to go back to your offer letter just like you would need to go back to your offer letter to see, versus I'm working with over 50 students, right? So it'll be a little bit easier for you to navigate to your offer letter and see these details. That's why we put them there. So I want you to pay attention to the specific details around your start date. For the majority of you, you're going to be doing a 10-week placement. I think there's a couple of you that might be doing a term that's a little bit shorter. That's completely fine, but that's detailed in your offer letter. So make sure that you're paying attention to your start and end dates. Again, there's some of you who are 40 hours full-time. There's some of you that are maybe part-time 20 hours. It just depends on your site. And compensation is ranging, but for the most part, the base is $15 an hour. And then obviously you're here today for the orientation, which is today, right? In your offer letter as well, we included information for your direct supervisor and or mentor at your internship sites. So that's going to be the person who's going to be able to give you the details of your actual project. If you come and say like, hey, Cheryl, like I'm working on something with the Slack data center, and I was wondering if I could do, Cheryl can't answer you because Cheryl does not work at Slack and I am not an engineer, right? You need to go to your mentor and ask those questions. Specifically, Growth Sector is handling the payroll and like the administrative portion of this, right? So I want to make sure that you are very clear that you have two entities that you're working with. Your site, who is going to determine the exact hours that you're working, because a lot of you might have flexible mentors who are like, you don't need to be here from exactly 9 to 5. Maybe you can work like flex hours or depending on the project that you're working on. So you need to determine that stuff with your mentor that's on your offer letter. All right. So if you have any issues of finding it, if you didn't receive it from me, which you did, but if you didn't receive it from me and you can't find it, please send me an email after this and I will forward that to you, but everybody should have that. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So I want to spend very briefly going over how you all are going to be paid and hired this summer. So this is different. You all are not employees of Growth Sector and you are not employees of your internship sites, right? So even though you are on the NASA JPL campus, you are not a NASA JPL employee. Even though you are on site at NREL, you are not an NREL employee, and you are also not a Growth Sector employee. You are being brought on as a contractor. So the difference between, and I'm not a tax professional, so I'm not going to be able to answer a ton of tax questions. In your initial onboarding email that I sent you, I sent an attachment that included more details, that includes just like some frequently asked questions, but the differences between a contractor and employee. Some of the main things I want to point out is that a contractor receives a 1099 at the end of the year. So in January 23, in order for you to file your taxes, you will receive a 1099 from Growth Sector. When you're an employee at Target, let's say, you receive a W-2, they take out taxes and all of that stuff for you. When you are a contractor, none of that happens. So if we say that your stipend is $6,000 for the summer, you are going to get $6,000, right? that doesn't mean like, yay, free money. It means that the tax liability is now on you. So that's why we recommend that you connect with your tax professional, do some research in terms of like what your withholding should be. That way you don't get any surprises in January, February, when the next tax season comes up. So whatever that means for you in terms of like withholding, just make sure that you have that in mind as well, because you're going to have to end up paying taxes on that. Hopefully that makes sense. But just know that a 1099 is going to be coming to you. So the information that you put on your W-9, and more importantly, the information that you put into bill.com is where that 1099 is going to be mailed to. Right? So make sure that the information that you are putting, that you're giving us, is where you're going to be in January, where you can accept mail and where you can get that information. I noted bill.com. At this point, I think almost everybody on this call should have received an invitation from bill.com. I see some people nodding. Okay, good. So bill.com is how we actually issue your payment on a bi-weekly basis. So Ivana, can you go to the next slide? Perfect. So bill.com is a really basic system that our growth sector accountant will process you through. You'll receive an invitation. You need to set up your onboarding. It's very straightforward in terms of like what you need, your name and information that you need to be putting in there. And that's how you're paid on a bi-weekly basis. So it's easier if you set up direct deposit, but if that's not possible, I believe there's a process in there within your setup that can send you a paper check as well, if that's what you prefer. But it will be mailed to the address that you input into the system. All right. So I want to draw your attention to our pay schedule that we're going to be going off of this summer. So this was emailed out to all of you, and you need to keep access to this pay schedule, print it, put it on your fridge, just so you know, or maybe put in your calendar, like these dates are important. All right. So I'm going to go through, hopefully this is very clear. So on the left-hand column, we have your work period or the dates that you worked, right? So first example, May 16th through May 27th. That applies to almost nobody on this call, I think, except for one intern that is starting on Monday. Everybody else, you're starting a little bit later, so you'll probably fall into the May 30th, June 10th work period. So if you're working between at your placement, and not just you deciding that you're going to work, your start date on your offer letter needs to say, if you're starting on May 23rd and your offer letter says that, perfect. So you're in this pay period. If you decide that you are very excited about interning at Slack and your start date is June 27th, but you're like, hey, I want to do additional research and I'm going to start on May 16th. That's cool. You can do that, but you're not going to be paid. And you should not be submitting anything until your pay period actually begins on your offer letter. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So again, using May 16th through May 27th as your work period, your invoice is due on May 26th. The invoice due date is always a Friday. Is it? I think it's a Thursday. So one question you're going to ask, and I already see it, is, hey, Cheryl, the invoice is due, but the work period is not done yet. So you can see that May 26th, it says invoice is due, but your work period is May 16th through May 27th. We realize that you're projecting your hours for that last day, right? So as you get into like the flow of things, you realize that you're 40 hours a week, which means that May 26th, even though the invoice is due, you need to have an assumption of how many hours you're going to work. You're probably going to do like the 8 hours unless you've made a different deal with your mentor, right? So you're projecting your hours for that last day in the pay period. Hopefully that's clear. I'm just checking the chat to see if I'm confusing anybody. If you need clarification, feel free to unmute yourselves. I want to make sure you understand that very clearly.
May you please clarify?
All right, what part is not clear of that? So you're submitting, okay, so I'll go to the next week. So let's say that your internship begins on June 13th. You are working from June 13th through June 24th, right? So it's a 2-week period. And then and I'm going to go to the next slide afterwards, not yet, Ivana. I'm going to show you like how you're going to submit your hours, but the hours that you're submitting is for the work you did beginning on June 13th and every day through June 24th, right? But your invoice is due on June 23rd, the day before you've officially done the work. So you need to project how many hours you would work on June 24th and submit that on the 23rd, right? So like, let's say that the deadline was yesterday. I know for myself, I'm gonna work today, which is Friday, from 9 until 5. So when I submit my invoice Thursday, yesterday, I'm projecting the 8 hours that I would have worked today. So it's submitted on time.
Thank you.
Sure.
I
I know that's a little, I get it. So that's why I want to spend some time on this.
have a question on bill.com. When you're basically setting up your account, I put that I'm being hired as a contractor. However, it's asking me for like a company name or what type of contract I am. Do you know specifically what we should be putting on there?
I think this question came up for another student. You would just be putting, so you don't need to necessarily, I think it was Callista. Nope, sorry, I saw you.
It was me too, but I haven't addressed it yet.
Okay, so in that situation, you don't necessarily need to put in your site information. It would just be, so if it's asking for a business name, you are the business because you're a contractor, right? So if you don't have a business name, you can either leave it blank if it doesn't allow you to, just put your name in that field because you're a contractor.
What about the industry? It asks about industry, and then it asks about accounting software. I don't know what to put for either of those exactly.
Accounting software. Okay, I don't see what you see, so I'm going to check in with our accountant and I'm going to email everybody right after this.
Okay.
So industry, accounting software, and what was the last one?
So when I was doing that, I saw that it has an engineering option, so I put engineering, honestly, but it may not be correct.
Yeah, and honestly, that this is internal, so we know who you are as an intern, right? But I just need to know what our accountant needs you to put in there. He's probably going to be pretty flexible, but I just want to give you all a clear answer.
Thank you. And another question about the payments. So the contract that you just show us was an hourly, and you were talking about like hourly and like 2-week period of hourly work. But if in our contract it just say like a number of money, it's not hourly. So how is the payment in that situation?
Okay, let's talk about that afterwards. I'll double check your contractor agreement. So you'll even note in your contractor agreement too, it does note for some of, like on one of the last pages of the contractor agreement, it notes like what your stipend is capped at. So for instance, like I know like for students who are getting the $15 an hour stipend, it'll say that your contract is maxed at $6,000 because $15 an hour for 40 hours a week for 10 weeks ends up being capped at $6,000 for the summer, for instance, right? So that would be the trade-off. But if you need a further breakdown, like let's say your stipend is a little bit higher, then we can break it down for you. So just handle offline. Thanks.
Carol, just so you know, Victor says that there is an option for I don't have an accounting software.
Oh, perfect.
So, you know, we'll check back with Shannon, of course, but where there's an option like that, I would just choose that option.
Perfect. Thanks, Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll get back to everybody though too for that.
If I already filled it out, I put educate. I think I put education as the industry.
All right. None of this is wrong.
I was going to say I did the correct
answer. But I'll double check with the accountant. I'm sure all of this is fine, but I'll just double check for what field he wants you all to fill out. So for everybody who hasn't done it, that way you can not have the same question. All right. So that is the pay schedule, just in terms of when you're working and when you're submitting. All right. I will normally, don't depend on me, but I will normally send a reminder like the week of saying like, hey, interns, like your invoice is due this week, so make sure you get it in. But don't wait for me. Like, what if I go on vacation or if I'm out sick? I don't know. I won't be, but I'm just saying, just remember to like do it. Okay, so I'm including a copy of our invoice template. You all should have received the invoice template from me via email as well. And this is what you're going to be submitting on the bi-weekly basis. Not very impressive, but it's just basics, right? So you're gonna put your information, so intern name, your site, Cal State LA, let's say, your phone number, email. Make sure you're updating your services for. So that would be the dates like in that pay period document, right? And then bill 2, leave that the same because you're billing growth sector. And then you're logging your actual hours. So if you worked on June 13th, 8 hours, we need, and I don't need like extreme detail about like the programming language that you did for 30 minutes, and then you switch to another, I don't need to know that, but I need to have an idea of what you spent your 8 hours doing. So I gave a sample here of June 13th, the breakdown of like you spent 4 hours, because a lot of you are going to go through another orientation with your actual site. So maybe that was a half-day orientation on day 1. You spent a couple hours reading through your department manual and doing notes. And then the last 2 hours of your day, you were setting up equipment. That's fine. That's detailed enough.
For
right?
the internship site, we just put our school to clarify.
You're putting your where you're working for the summer.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Right? So not where you do the STEM core program, but where you interviewed and got placed.
Just the address, not the name.
The name.
The name. Got it.
So Cal State LA, NASA JPL, Tesla, where are you working? Okay. So a couple of things I wanted, okay, let's keep going through this. So the Excel spreadsheet that I sent you for the invoices, it tabulates your hours at the end, at the total hours. So you don't need to change it. It will keep adding it as you add your hours. A few things I want to note. You're contractors, not employees. So you get paid, you do not get paid for time off. I feel like these are probably questions that are coming up in the chat. You don't get paid for time off. So if you are not working on what's 4th of July, then you don't put 4th of July vacation because you're a contractor, unfortunately. I was a contractor for many years. It's just like the way the dice is, right? But if you did work that day, that's fine. You can put that in. Your mentor approved those as your approved hours. You can put that on your on the invoice. You are unfortunately not paid for lunch hours. Not saying if your mentor is saying that you can work that into what you're doing, 8 hours or whatever hours you're allotted on your contract is the hours that you can bill us for. If you bill under, that's totally fine, but you're maxed at 40 hours a week. We just can't have you work over that. Right? So if like you build, if you're in offer letter said that you are allowed, your internship is 40 hours a week, full-time, you decided to take a couple personal days or you're out sick and you only worked like 30 hours 1 week. And the next week you're like, oh, I want to make it back. I'm gonna work 50 hours. We can't have you do that. Right? So you need to, primarily you're working things out with your mentor, but you cannot work any extra hours that are not included on your contract and in your offer letter. Which is why we were very clear about, even on your contract, it says that you're maxed out at $6,000 for your stipend. So if you choose to work extra hours, that's great, but you cannot bill growth sector for those extra hours, unfortunately.
So I had a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I don't know if this applies to anybody else, but as far as I know, for who I'll be interning with, my orientation's on June 3rd, I was told. So would that not fall into me charging the billing hours or putting that on an invoice?
When does your placement actually begin?
June 13th.
Are you Caltrans?
Yes.
Let me check.
Okay.
Because I was under the impression you were starting a little bit later. Cool. Thank you for that. Good question, Julia. What else do I want to tell you about this? So hours, so you're logging your hours per week. I would recommend that you don't wait until the end of the bill period to write all of this in because you're going to forget what you did. So not saying that if it was me, I would just go in at the end of my shift every day and put in what I did for the day, or every few days or every other day, but I would not recommend waiting until like the deadline to write what you did for the last 2 weeks, because you're not going to remember. All right. The other thing I want to indicate is you should be updating at the bottom where it says hourly rates. You need to update that for what your hourly rate is based on your offer letter, and then what your total amount that you're billing. So that would be your hourly rate times your total hours. Right? Y'all are engineers, you know this, right? Hourly rate times total hours will give you the amount that you're able to bill growth sector for. You are going to sign. So it says contractor signature. That is you. You're going to sign. An e-signature is fine. And then intern name, you're going to write in your name and then the date for that bill period, right? So I shouldn't see like June 1st all the way throughout, like without you updating it. Like it needs to be updated. When you scroll down, a big thing I want to note is it says supervisor initial. We need your supervisor, your mentor, that name that's on your offer letter, or whoever you're being assigned to. They need to take a look at, and they are aware of this as well, need to take a look at your timesheet and what you're writing on your timesheet and sign off on it. So whether you can check in with them as to how they want to do it. Most that we have in the past will just have you email it to them before the deadline. They just take a look at it real quick. Cool. They'll put in their initials, send it back to you, and then you can submit it. So just make sure that you are factoring in enough time to get that done. Right? So you can be like on schedule with like, okay, like I know Cheryl said that the deadline was on Thursday. So I'm going to ask my supervisor on Thursday morning to sign it, but my supervisor is suddenly on vacation for the next like 4 days and I didn't plan. So plan accordingly, right? Just make sure that you're checking in with them and know what's going on. If there's somebody else that they would recommend that has in the department that can sign off for you, but somebody needs to be signing off on those hours. And that's just sort of how we do like our quality control, and like we're checking in with your mentors and your sites throughout the summer as well. So just making sure that what you're writing on your invoices is what you're actually doing at your placement. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? So we have put a deadline for each for the pay schedule. So you do need to upload by the deadline on your pay schedule. I think I said by 12 p.m. of that day. Right? So you are uploading to a Dropbox, and I'm going to give you the Dropbox link that you're going to be using for the entire summer. This is not a Dropbox link that you submitted your W-9s or that you submitted your contract agreement for onto. This is a completely separate Dropbox link that you will be using, that one Dropbox link for the entire summer of where you're going to be submitting this invoice template, but just updated every 2 weeks. I feel like there's probably questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you said every 2 weeks, right? That we have to input our invoice.
Yep. So on the dates on the pay schedule that we just went over.
Oh, okay. So it's every 2 weeks. Do we have to like put the day we work in and what we're doing, or are you gonna give us the sheet to do that?
So that's what we're going over right now. We're going over your invoice template. So this is, can you see the screen that we're sharing?
Yeah.
Right?
That's
so
just an example, right?
This is an example. So you are getting a template from me that was, I believe, already emailed out to everybody. So that email has already gone out, and it's an Excel document that you're going to be updating with your information and what you did at your internship for those 2 weeks.
Okay.
Right? Is that clear to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So I am noting late submissions. So if you, I don't have the pay schedule in front of me, but like, let's say the date for on your pay schedule said submission due on, I'm sorry, I'm throwing out a random date, June 6th, you missed the deadline and you submitted it on June 8th, doesn't mean you're not going to get paid. I mean, I should withhold your money. It doesn't mean you're not going to get paid. It just means that you're going to get paid on the next pay period. So you're going to have to wait an extra 2 weeks, right? That sucks. Nobody wants to do that. So just make sure you're paying attention to the pay schedule and you're submitting on time. Just because we have a lot of interns that we're processing, so we can't do it piecemeal. Like we need to do all of you at the same time and process through on the bi-weekly schedule. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Yeah, by 12 p.m. So you're submitting, oh, go back, please. So you're submitting your invoices via Dropbox by 12 p.m. on the posted deadline. So that pay schedule that you have in front of you, just know those due dates, and by 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're on the East Coast, you get a few extra hours technically because it's 3 p.m. for you. And this is the invoice submission link. I will email this out to everybody again. I would encourage you to save like asterisks, like save this link somewhere safe so that, because you're going to be using it every 2 weeks throughout the entire summer. All right. Any questions about that? This session is also being recorded, so I'm going to send you all the recording. That way, if anything was not clear or when it comes to actually having to do this in a couple of weeks, you can go back and hear my voice again and remember, like, okay, like Cheryl said, we're supposed to submit it this way and total my hours and change this and change that. Okay, but this is the invoice submission link that you will, so please do not email me your invoices. You need to submit it to this submission link, and I will resend this link out to everybody after today's call. Okay, next slide, please. All right, and back to more fun stuff. So we really want to make sure that we are documenting your experiences as STEM core students, but also as STEM core interns and researchers. And I think it's just so important, especially for the work that we're doing in terms of like securing more funding to run programs like, or this program continuously, but then also to be able to share with students who come after you. We're gonna have interns next summer and next fall and next spring. So it'll be really cool for them to be able to hear from you who interned at NREL and what your experience was like, or, hey, I had a really cool experience at San Jose State this summer, and this is why it was cool. And this is the reasons why I think you should do it. So we are asking you all to submit your experiences. So I am not going to play the clip, but there is a quick video. It's on the Growth Sector website if you care to look at it, of one of our students from last summer who interned, Lindsay, and she gives a quick overview of just like what her experience was like at Lawrence Berkeley Lab last summer. So we're asking you to record a short video testimonial, answering a few questions. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but like very basic stuff like your name, what you liked about your internship, what a day in the life was like. So I'm not going to give you details in terms of how you're submitting it yet. Myra, who pretty much most of you should be familiar with at this point through your interviews or through follow-ups, will be touching base with all of you probably in the next few weeks to give you instructions as to like how you can submit the video. I know everybody doesn't love doing videos, and we might have an alternative option for those of you who might not want to do a video. Maybe we'll take like a photo and like a written response instead. But we do need to get those from you before the end of your time in the internship slash research. Okay. One thing I will note is what's different. We're not, so Growth Sector is not requiring you to have an NCAP project. However, your site might. And I know a lot of your sites have this in the works as well. So
sorry. Would you please first explain what is that? NCAP project?
I'm sorry, like an ending project or like a poster presentation. Okay. Yeah. So you'll hear directly from your mentor supervisor if that's something that they're going to have you do. Some of you might have to give like a presentation at the end or have a poster presentation. I know a few of you are going to have like weekly presentations, just depending on like your site. Growth sector is not requiring that of you. However, we have asked your sites to like keep us in the loop in terms of, and I ask you all to do the same as well. If you have a presentation that you're giving that might be virtual or materials that you're happy to share with us, we're always looking to be able to sort of like take a look at like what our interns are doing, whether if it's that we use it for the growth sector website or materials for the STEM core program to share with other interns in other schools. We love to know what you have going on and like what you've been doing, but just not a requirement on our end, but just something that I want to make sure that you all are aware of as well. Okay, and next slide, please. All right, and I think that is the nuts and bolts of what we needed to go through. We're so excited for all of you to start. I know it's been such a long process for some of you who got in this process early in like October, November, submitted your stuff, and like here we are, hard work pays off, and you're about to start. So I would encourage you, if you have not already heard from your mentors, just in terms of next steps, like if you know that you have an orientation coming up and that's like the first thing that you're doing, but your site should start being in contact with you if they have not already, just in terms of what you should be expecting for your official start. Okay, just to be clear, I'm not going to be the one who's saying like, hey, like make sure you show up at JPL on Monday morning at 9 a.m. That's going to be the communication from your site. I will be in contact with either like your mentors or like our main contact for the internship, just to sort of check in on overall progress outside of like the payroll and all that stuff as well. So just keep in mind that we'll be keeping tabs and paying attention to what's going on. And we are sending all of you out just as representation of the STEM core program. So our expectations is that like you're showing up for work on time. It's only a 10-week opportunity, right? For some of you, fingers crossed, that might end up being extended if your site is looking to hire you on, and that's something that you're looking to do. But keep in mind, it's like a 10-week long interview, right? These are future letters of recommendation, future references, future connections on like LinkedIn. So just keep in mind that this is like really like you're setting up like who you are in the STEM field and definitely in your professional career. So just sort of like keep that in mind. Be mindful that you are in, most of you like in a work setting. So take the advice from your mentors. I know some of you might hear from your mentor that you, great that you showed up like in business casual on day one, which I highly encourage you to do, but maybe they're like, this is not what we do here, so you can come casual the rest of the week, but take the lead from your mentor in terms of like what their advice is. I cannot tell you because all of your sites are so different, but just keep those things in mind. I would say take advantage, ask questions, talk to your mentors as much as possible, other people who are in your department. Y'all are students, so they love to give you as much advice as possible, and just be as big of a sponge as you can, because you never know how many opportunities like this you'll have in the future, right? But again, congratulations. I put my email address, which you all have, and contact info here. I will be following up with all of you in regards to those questions around bill.com. And I think there was a question in terms of, oh, your orientation. Yep. But yes, I will stay around if you have questions, and stop the recording now. But congratulations again. And if you are good to go, and if you're done, you're free to leave. Otherwise, I'll stick around for questions.